the natural features focus areas in green. We had 14 of those that we identified in our county comprehensive plan, 6 agricultural resource focus areas. And the way we identified these were to look at tons of data. We analyzed all the different GIS maps. We met with the public. We talked to local experts. And we identified these kind of concentrations of outstanding natural features for the natural features focus areas. And for the agricultural focus areas, the really high quality soils in our region, as well as concentrations of active, viable farm operations. When we were developing these plans, we broke them into 2 pieces. The first one dealing with the natural features, the second part 2 of the conservation plan, dealing with the agricultural features. And what staff planners did in both those instances was to actually go out into the communities and have hosts of meetings, sit down with people who live in these areas, talk to them, basically do a SWOT analysis, identify the strengths, threats, weaknesses, opportunities, to really try to identify the trends and issues impacting each individual focus area. And from that, in the documents, we tried to lay out what the most important issues were and then identify ways to improve those areas based on the problems that they're having and the opportunities there. So we identified a whole bunch of different action items that could be taken by both us and our partners who we work closely with in developing these strategies. Some of the actions that came out of these plans, just to highlight a few, one was stream corridor protection. We actually got a grant through the DEC to fund developing various tools. We wound up developing 4 different tools, a mix of regulatory and non-regulatory tools, to work with landowners and other partners to really buffer the areas around streams. What Ed was saying, trying to actually get the sediment and pollutants not entering into the water in the first place was our way to go. So right now, we've already protected, I guess, we've got about 11,000 linear feet of stream buffer.
A little over 2 miles.
Yeah, with 150 volunteers. Scott's been out there with the Boy Scouts, digging holes in the ground, planting trees. So it's been a popular program. The Capital Reserve Fund is actually a fund for protection of lands in the agricultural resource focus areas and the natural resource focus areas. What it is a kind of a small pot of money that we can use to work to help support various projects with partners, such as the Finger Lakes Land Trust. And through that kind of little incentive program, really, we've been able to help protect about 300 acres of land. Our Purchase of Development Rights program, we work very closely with municipalities who are interested in this program, as well as groups like Cooperative Extension, the Land Trust, working together with the landowners and interested farmers who want to sell their development rights on their farm so they can continue ag operations way into the future, but have an infusion of cash to help them make it a viable farm operation. To date, we've secured grants for roughly 2,500 acres to be protected in the county. And again, it's a wonderful partnership with local municipalities, Dryden being a prime example. And finally, one that's in the discussion phase right now is the farm leasing program. This came out of the ag focus plans and discussions with farmers and analysis of data, realizing that almost 1/3 of all actively farmed land is actually leased land, not owned by the farmers. And so the farmers identified that as kind of a problem area and something that could be proactively done in the community, kind of formalizing, coordinating the work, making that easier for farmers to find people who want to lease their lands and people to lease their lands to farmers nearby instead of far away and that type of thing. The next topic is energy and greenhouse gas emissions. Ed mentioned that the county comprehensive plan was modified in 2008. Part of that was the goal of the reduction of emissions, 80% by 2050. So the first thing we did was develop the strategy for how we're going to take the first step on that path of reducing emissions 20% by 2020. So we developed the 2020 energy strategy. And as you can see from this slide, thank goodness for higher education, because they are very committed to working on this, and they're helping our community along substantially with their efforts and resources. I'll talk in a minute about this new local measures, but wanted to let you know that within this strategy, we realize we're not working in a vacuum here. We counted some of the stuff the state's doing, established programs, not things that will most hopefully go away anytime soon, like Renewable Portfolio Standard, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, that type of thing. And federal measures, the fuel efficiency standards, some of the lighting standards, appliance standards that are already so far in the pipeline that we, fingers crossed, hope aren't going to be revoked anytime soon. Other community measures, really trying to identify all the great work that the local municipalities are doing to address greenhouse gas emissions at the government level and in their communities, as well as the public schools and industry and all the other folks working hard on these topics. So the new local measures that we identified, we came up with 10 of them, and I will also say that all of this does get us to the 20% reduction by 2020 that we've been trying to achieve. But it is going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take everybody working together to do that. But you can see PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's a method to try to help people to retrofit or upgrade their homes to make them more efficient and more comfortable. We're looking at waste diversion with our solid waste, a number of strategies having to do with transportation. Obviously, that's a big component. And then some things looking towards the future having to do with district energy and a roadmap for the future, looking at how we want our energy future to look in more detail. Just to highlight a couple of the actions that came out of that strategy that I'm kind of excited about, we've made an effort to focus in on the existing building stock. We've got a lot of older buildings, drafty buildings in the community that are really going to cost people a lot of money to heat in the future as energy prices start spiking. So we did an analysis of our existing energy programs geared toward low-income households and identified some gaps and problem areas with those programs. So we're trying to address some of those issues now. And I'm working with just so many of you in the audience on a lot of these last ones. A community energy campaign that we're looking to move on. Trying to get everyone in the whole county to know that this is something that they can take proactive action on and get them to try something new to reduce the amount of energy that they're using. And then recognizing that when you motivate them, it'd be great to have some money available for them to do some of this work. So working with local housing people and bankers on developing community energy financing for people here. And then recognizing that if you motivate them, you get the money, and there's no one to do the work, then that's not that helpful either. So making sure we have a strong, diverse workforce to do this work. And then finally, the one-stop web portal is kind of my own personal plea, trying to navigate all the different NYSERDA sites and everything, that we can do better. We can make it cleaner and easier for people to navigate these programs and get through all of this. Got to keep that motivation level up while we have it. So that's it on conservation and energy. I'll turn it over to Joan Jerkowicz, our Deputy Commissioner, to talk about development focus areas.
All right, now I have 3 things to manage and only 2 hands, so this will be interesting. So, development focus areas is a term we've been using in our office. You may have heard it called smart growth, nodal development, new urbanism. It's got lots of names. It's been around for a long time. But every 8 to 10, maybe 12 years, we need a new name to get people to be excited about the concept. And what we're talking about here is what, oh, he's moved, Josh. Thank you. He's already summarized it for me when he was talking about what he was looking for in a community, what he wants to do. Thank you. What we're looking for is a little bit higher density, more mixed-use development, well-planned development, so we can walk to places and do things without constantly having to get in our car to go do something, and then get in our car to do another errand, and then drive to the other side of town to run yet another errand. Try to keep that, try to minimize some of that kind of transportation in the county. And if you've heard me talk about development focus areas before, you've heard me talk about a lot of the technical stuff, which I'm not going to do again tonight. Well, I'm bored with it. Some of you are too, probably. But one of the things we think this strategy will help with is if you look at national trends in terms of households and how households are changing over time, and in fact have already changed, you'll see that there's more of our households will not be the traditional Ozzie and Harriet, mom and dad and a couple of kids living in a house. We're going to have more households for young professionals, for empty nesters, single parents, couples without children, senior citizens. Those are the growing segments in our population, in our house demand for housing. And these are the groups of people that, in general, tend to want to live more in a mixed-use, denser setting than maybe the more traditional. I don't want to pick on Ozzie and Harriet. Ricky and Lucy lived in the city. Going the wrong direction. The Cleavers, thank you. So how's the picture look in Tompkins County for getting us in this direction? We're actually in pretty good shape. One of the major sort of determinants of where you can have higher density development, whether it's housing or mixed use, is where you have infrastructure, primarily water and sewer, available to support that development. And so the Tompkins County Council of Governments, in cooperation with Tompkins County Area Development and the County Planning Department, did a study, a countywide water and sewer infrastructure study, to determine where we had capacity, where we didn't have capacity, what it would take to increase capacity to allow this kind of additional development. Oops. You didn't get to see that for very long, I'm sorry. So this is sort of the one summary of that entire study, a one-page summary. So this is just a map of the county. The circles are the areas where we're talking about are being development focus areas. And some of the areas are ready now. There's capacity now. The water and sewer lines are in place. We could start building at higher densities today. Some need some minor improvements, so they're in the 5 to 10 year category of not being ready yet, but they're almost there. A few more investment, put into the 10 to 15 year category, and more than 15 are generally those areas that don't have either water or sewer yet. We're in our hamlet areas, where we're talking about those kinds of development focus areas. It might be much longer term before we can start talking about higher densities. In other words, until we can get water and sewer infrastructure in there, or when we can afford to put water and sewer infrastructure in there.
So Trumansburg doesn't have it, and Groton and Dryden do?
Trumansburg, for example, Trumansburg has a limitation. They need a backup water supply. So until that's in place, it's hard to encourage. Yes, there can be some more development, but they really have an existing need that there's an improvement needed. They have the lines in place. If they found a new well or a new water supply as a backup, they're ready to go. So again, there's slightly different stories on each little dot. I'm not sure I know all the stories. I have to know the Trumansburg story. Freeville, for example, which is, I believe, the only dot that's up there that's 10 to 15 years. They have sewer there. They don't have a public water supply. So that's why it would take longer. You'd actually have to develop an entire water system for